Hi, I'm Chris Overstreet, and I have opinions. I also have a microphone. Nice microphone. Last weekend, as you might know, was the second No Kings in America protest across the country and indeed around the world. And unfortunately, my business is as a vendor at conventions, comic conventions, anime conventions like that. And I was at a comic convention last weekend, which means I didn't get to participate in one of the 2,000 or 3,000 protests that were going on across the country. However, I'm very enthused about just the massive turnout, what is possibly the largest protest in my lifetime in the United States. There's some images that I found here on Blue Sky. We'll start with this one right here. That's in Chicago. And there's more Chicago. This is Portland, Oregon. Can you see that properly? Let me scroll up a little bit more. Yeah, how about we not do the copyrighted sound on that, huh? Anyway, you get the idea. There's Pittsburgh. Philadelphia. Another image from Chicago. I mean, also scroll down a little bit further. Kansas City, that's not necessarily someplace you would expect to see a big turnout. Austin, my state governor actually called out the National Guard for that one, but nothing much happened. I'll get back to that in a moment. Let's see here. There's one in particular that, here we go. That's Boise, Idaho. If you would ever expect a small turnout in the state, Idaho is one of the reddest of red states. White supremacists actively moved there to try to help take over the government, not that it needs any help. And that many people turned out for No Kings. So yeah, and that is really, it makes me feel a little bit better about the future of this country, that so many people are coming out to defend democracy. And it makes me feel even better that it was almost totally nonviolent. I mean, the New York Police Department actually came out and said there were 0 incidents of violence, 0 people arrested, and you know the NYPD was just hungry to bust some heads. But they had to report, nope, nothing happened. However, it wasn't entirely without violence because, yeah, at a couple of protests, Trumpers showed up. One woman wailed in at one protest, I think in North Carolina, started punching people. And when she was arrested, she was trying to wrestle away an American flag from another person. Here in another incident, we have a case of, like it says, a driver deliberately ramming protesters, trying to recreate Charlottesville 2017, I suppose. And like that. But the violence was all on the side of Trumpers, of conservatives. So yeah, despite all the talking and all the bragging about how it was a Hate America rally and how the liberals were ultra-violent terrorists, you need to be out, be scared, be careful. They're coming for you. No, we were not coming for you. We're just coming out to say this is wrong, this is bullshit, and it needs to stop. And how did Trump and his bunch respond? That's not it. Where is it? Yeah, that is the beginning of how they responded. Donald Trump reposting his vice president's little clip. And then, to make things even better, that's not it. Yeah, then the infamous video of the King Trump plane piloted by Donald Trump bombing protesters with literal shit. So, yeah. Not only are they not ashamed of it, they're leaning into it. They're basically saying, yeah, Trump's a king. What are you going to do about it? You can't stop us. We have absolute power. We're here forever. Yeah, if you ever needed to if you ever needed more evidence that we are in a dictatorship, or at least that Donald Trump thinks he's a dictator, that was it. Of course, this just makes it all the more apparent. This is the East Wing of the White House. Yesterday, Donald Trump began tearing part of it down so he can build his gigantic ballroom, which will be bigger than the actual White House itself. None of which was approved by Congress, none of which was approved by the Historical Commission, whose job it is to protect and defend America's public buildings. This is your building. Donald Trump is tearing down, people. That is your property as an American. And yeah, Donald Trump doesn't care. Donald Trump believes that since he was elected president, he is now dictator. He owns America, he thinks. Donald Trump thinks he owns you. But it's not like he owns everybody. As this little bit said, Kenny Loggins is basically, this isn't going to happen. Trump is not going to go back and take off Highway to the Danger Zone, the Top Gun song, off of his video, no matter what Kenny Loggins does about it. And the Supreme Court will prevent Kenny Loggins from suing over it. But the fact that Kenny Loggins is actually trying, is actually pushing back against it, is something. In an actual dictatorship, people become too afraid to push back against the dictator. And I hope that we are still a long way away from that. But one final note about all this. No, are no kings in America, I say are, I wasn't there this time. I was out for the first one, but not the second one. But the No Kings marches were not about changing Trump's mind or changing Trump's behavior. That was never going to happen. Nor was it about changing the minds of any of Trump's followers. Bear in mind that Trump still has 37% of America firmly behind him. That's enough where if he wants to stay in power forever and he can get enough guns pointed in the right direction, he can do it. But that's not what the protests were about. The protests were about getting people out and showing that there is still strength against Donald Trump in America. It's about giving people who oppose Donald Trump something actual, something solid, something firm, something active that they can do to push back against Trump. Something that will make, if not Trump, then maybe some of his Republican followers in Congress or in the state houses of the various states, make them a little bit more afraid that we might not get reelected this time. And if Donald Trump or his followers can't figure out a way to have the military step up, we might actually have to have an election. Oh no! And when that election comes, these marches will go out. And the people that are going to these marches and the marches that follow, they're also going to be going to the phone banks. They're going to be going door to door to their friends. They're going to be going to the polls to help run the polls, to help the votes be counted properly and legally. They're going to be active. They're going to be on the march, literally, to hold up whatever little is left of our democracy and say, no, Mr. Trump, you are not a king, and America will never have a king. Fingers crossed, everybody. I'm Chris Overstreet, and I have opinions.